Hello, everyone, and welcome into CrushTheStreet.com. I'm joined today with Bryan Slusarchuk, president of K92 Mining. And this man has extensive history with international experience, structuring funding, and operating companies involved in mineral exploration and development production. He's now the president of a company that is a producer. This is news as of today, and it's official. K92 is producing gold. And, we've been initiating coverage now on K92 since the company IPO'd a couple months back, and they've hit the ground running. They're a turnkey project. Such an amazing story, really. Purchasing their flagship project from Barrick in the trenches of the bear market and just producing now in the early stages of the bull market. And the timing now to be speaking to Bryan could not be any more strategic with the pullback we've seen in precious metals. Bryan, thanks so much for coming on the show with me today.
Kenneth, thanks a lot for having me on. It's a very exciting time for K92 with the announcement that we have commenced gold production from the Irumafimpa gold deposit that we own in Papua New Guinea. We're very excited to have this come online now. The production has started ahead of schedule, on budget, so we couldn't be more pleased.
Bryan, we got to discuss this massive correction that we've seen in precious metals before we get into the company here. Gold went below pre-Brexit levels, and silver had dipped below $18 an ounce. And I'm reading in the news, and everyone's saying that it's because of a rate hike. We also got problems in Europe with the banking crisis. And I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on this environment that we're seeing and, how it's affecting gold here?
Kenneth, I think it's eerily similar in many ways to the financial crisis of 2008. We're starting to hear rumblings, as your listeners will know, about Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank is mentioned in the same breath now as Lehman Brothers, referring to the previous Lehman collapse. There are huge socioeconomic, geopolitical, and of course, monetary issues that are very worrisome. At the same time, what we're starting to see is you see these intermittent flights to the U.S. dollar because of that fear that's out there. Look, the British pound yesterday touched a low not seen since 1985. The pullback yesterday was sharp, and it went lower. The British pound went lower than it did the day after Brexit was announced. So I think that you're starting to see all of this uncertainty. You'll get intermittent moves into the U.S. dollar, but what all of this really means is that we could be entering just an exceptionally explosive environment for gold. The world is a changing place. As you know, the recent news out of the IMF regarding the SDR basket. Take a look at China with essentially 11%, the one entering that basket with a weighting of 10.9%. That's a greater weighting than the Japanese yen. It's a greater weighting than a number of Western currencies that in the past were just standard bearers. And I think that's representing a global shift in terms of financial clout, financial power. And what's interesting is that the Chinese, the Russians, the Indians are gobbling up as much gold as they can get their hands on, whereas in the Western world here, we're doing the exact opposite. I'm embarrassed to say as a Canadian that Canada no longer owns any gold nationally. And it's insane to me when the central bankers and government officials in Canada say, well, don't worry about that because we've got 50 billion US dollars supporting our currency. Well, that's one fiat currency supporting another with intrinsically devaluing metrics. And it's the definition of it's not going to end well. And with that, I'm very pleased that a big chunk of my net worth is tied up in gold.
Yeah. Bryan, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We have the DXY now, the US dollar, in the 96 point range here, stronger than it's been in a while. The IMF downgraded the U.S. GDP growth projections from 2.2% to a measly 1.6% growth rate. And, I just got to wonder, what is the economy going to look like when we officially, quote unquote, go into a recession?
It's scary. And I'll tell you the other thing about now versus 2008 is when the financial crisis of '08 occurred, the central bankers around the world and the governments around the world had a lot of ammunition. So what they did in a concerted way was dramatically attempt to stimulate the economy through monetary means and big rate cuts. At the same time, all governments around the world entered into a foolhardy, massive deficit program to try to fiscally stimulate things. Well, right now, we've got all the dangers that we had in 2008 present, but the central bankers and the governments are out of ammunition. Rates are at essentially zero around the world. As you know, and as you've talked about before, you've got a negative interest rate environment in many parts of the world. All of this should be very bullish for gold, but it's got to be very concerning to the central bankers who have tried to collude to act jointly in monetary policy that is obviously a worldwide failing of monetary policy, and it's going to be long-term bullish for gold. It's tough to predict the exact day that this tinderbox gets lit, but I think we're right around the corner.
Well, this year has been a resurgence for the junior mining sector, and many people, going into the summer here, thought that they missed the boat and that this, they missed the opportunity to invest in some quality names. And the correction we're seeing here might be proving to be an amazing opportunity to partner with some really amazing stories here, such as, K92. And but before I get into that, I'll ask you this. A lot of people are worried at the same time that this is it, that the bull run is over. Do you think the bull run is over?
No, I got asked just the other day, what inning do I think that we're in? Are we in the second or third inning of this gold bull market? And my comment was, I don't even think the national anthem is over. We're very, very early stages here. And this short-term correction is a correction while the long-term upward trend in gold remains firmly in place. And this pullback has given investors that believe in gold the opportunity to enter some of these names at a discounted value to where they were just a couple of months ago. If I look at K92, Kenneth, this is a company that we were fully funded for production restart when we started to trade on May 25th. Because of strong institutional demand, since that date, we've raised an additional $18.5 million in capital, which will allow for a dramatic ability to enter into expansion plans on an accelerated basis. We've got no debt, a healthy balance sheet. We've just announced the commencement of gold production. We've also announced that in very short order, we'll be releasing the results of a study regarding bringing a second gold deposit online. And yet the share price has pulled back over the past few weeks, giving investors an opportunity to buy at levels that we haven't seen since the initial trade date. So I think it's an incredible opportunity for people that like gold. And remember, if you're bullish on gold, at historical junctures in which the gold price moves higher, gold equities, in particular gold producers, outperform gold bullion. So I think it's a great opportunity. And K92 has now moved from being a concept, a development company, to being an operating gold mining business. And that's based on the announcement that was just put out that we've started production.
Yeah, and it's been such an incredible story, one that I've just loved covering. And maybe you can just remind everybody about the unique story that K92 had, going in and purchasing its flagship projects in the trenches of the bear market from Barrick, and then entering just today into production in the upswing of the bull market, fully funded, such a strong balance sheet. And then we haven't even talked about the management team, the people who are on board here. So, Bryan, please continue, and again, remind people about this incredible story.
Sure. This was an asset owned by Barrick Gold. Barrick purchased this gold project in 2007 for $141 million US. They then invested a further $120 million plus advancing the project. But Barrick, as most people know, had a debt problem. They had $13 billion in debt. They had a mandate to divest regionally out of all of these projects, and it was at the bottom of the gold market. Nobody wanted gold projects. Nobody wanted gold, and we were one of the few groups out there looking for good, high-quality gold projects. We purpose-built a team, some of the biggest names in the mining industry. Our chairman is a fellow named Tukey Angus. Well, Tukey is also the chairman of Nevson. He was a founding director of Ventana Gold, of Bema Gold. He was very early at Nico, at First Quantum. He's a real legend at being a buyer when nobody wants assets and a seller when everybody wants them. Ian Stalker, our CEO. Ian is a very much, he's an operational guy. He was the vice president of Goldfields when it was the fourth largest gold producer in the world. He was a managing director at Ashanti. But Ian's best known, perhaps, as the CEO of Uramin. Uramin was a situation that went from a microcap to a $2.5 billion takeover within 3 years. Alex Davidson on our team. Alex is the former executive vice president of Barrick Gold. He was the exec VP, exploration and corporate development worldwide for Barrick when Barrick purchased this asset and subsequently invested in it. Alex joined K92 a few days after we acquired it. So there's a world-class team of guys around this. We were out there looking for gold assets when nobody wanted them. So when Barrick needed to sell, we were in the really fortuitous spot of being one of the few groups in the world looking to be in acquisition mode. So we inherited, through that purchase, a mill with significant development underground, a 300-person camp, dedicated power line, road access to the property, excellent logistics every which way. And it was very much a turnkey operation. We had to come in, do some rehabilitation at the mine, do some rehabilitation and enhancement at the mill. We've done all of that. And because of the huge infrastructure that we inherited as part of this purchase, we were able to go from a May 25th trade date to talking to you here at the start of October, being able to say, we're in production. It's not a concept. We are producing gold as of today.
Yeah. Well, you guys have certainly hit the ground running. And, if you're listening to this interview at this moment, count yourself fortunate, because opportunities like this don't come around all the time. And then just with the timing of the pullback that we've seen and the value that the company is providing, the situations like this are extremely rare. Bryan, I just wanted to see if you had any closing thoughts here before we said parted ways.
I think that you've hit the nail on the head that in this business, as guys like Tukey Angus, Doug Kerwin, Ian Stalker, Alex Davidson will all tell you, timing isn't everything, but it's almost everything. And for listeners out there who are interested in gold, who are bullish on gold equities, on bullion, now is a great time to look at K92, especially given the fact that not only have we been in a downturn in the gold space over the past couple of months, but we've also just started production. So the timing, it's a confluence of opportunity here that I think is really special, and we'll look back at this, timing as a great entry opportunity.
Well, Bryan, I look forward to just what's going to happen and just what it will develop, and especially the gains that I am anticipating on seeing, as the company, as you guys continue to deliver value. So thanks again for coming on the show with me today and taking some time.
Thanks, Kenneth. Always a pleasure.